Well, hello there, and I do hope you're all well. Now, is this the best brilliant takedown of this Tory MP's apparent zinger? I'll set the scene for you. It was in the Transport Select Committee meeting where SNP MP for Paisley and Renfrewshire North, got that right, Gavin Newlands, asked RMT's Mick Lynch about what's the difference between having negotiations with ministers in Scotland than ministers south of the border. Clearly, Bexhill and Battle's Hue Merriman and chair of the Transport Select Committee took exception to this.
Thank you. Straight over to Gavin.
Thanks so much, Chair. You described the current setup. I think you used the word corrupt cabal, subsidised profit, etc., etc. Obviously, in Scotland, the ScotRail has been nationalised, is now under public ownership and control. And just last week it was announced that the sleeper service is going to come back into public ownership. Now, clearly, public ownership in and of itself isn't a panacea for all the problems that you've outlined and the operators have outlined, but would you see it as a first step to potentially seeing off some of those challenges?
I do see integration, and I hope the sleeper is integrated with ScotRail services. We want public ownership in the interest of the users, but all the other issues. And I don't think we're going to get a railway that runs in everybody's interest until the profit motive is taken out of it, because they will only run the services that will pay them a direct profit unless we give them incentives through subsidy, and that's what they've lived on. So the big owners, such as First Group, which is a Scottish company, have walked away from franchises. They walked away from the Great Western Railway franchise as soon as it was going to cost them any money or get any risk. And there's been a number of people that have run ScotRail and the sleeper service that have made a pig's ear of it, frankly. They cannot do what they bid for, because what they bid for undercuts the previous incumbent, and you get a downward spiral, I believe, and then we end up subsidising it. So I do see an integrated transport policy as the future, but that's got to be where all of the railway services, including freight, are running a broader interest than the people that are pitching in for the stake. And I think that's what the problem is, that they're driving down standards rather than driving them up, because the only standard they're interested in is their own return.
And lastly, because we need to move on to aviation, if I can, Chair, the General Secretary of the STUC, Ros Foyer, said at the weekend spoke about the difference in approach from the UK government and the Scottish government with regards to disputes. They said they know that they don't have a government that will give them everything they want as fast as they want, but they've got a government that will get around the table to discuss these things, and they don't have that south of the border. How much does that differ with the approach that the UK government has had?
Well, I do think there is a different atmosphere when you meet Scottish politicians of all hues. We go up there and meet all sorts of people, and they have an attitude, I think, where they want to resolve the issue. Whereas I think sometimes when we meet politicians down here, they want to exacerbate the issue and make us, for some reason, their enemy, and make our members some kind of victim of their ideological pursuit of a free market agenda. And that's something that I think the railway suffers from.
Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, so despite all of that and the fact that Scotland has got the nationalised operation, which you would like, Mr Lynch, and Gavin, you mentioned it's a better series of industrial relation strategy than south of the border. Yesterday, I believe that you, the RMT, voted for strike action on ScotRail. So where did it all go wrong there?
Well, it's not a panacea. You still get problems. They've got budget restrictions, and they're picking up from what was left to them by Bellio, the previous caretaker of that. So I'm not saying that we will never have industrial relations issues, but I think I'd make a prediction we'll get to a solution with ScotRail in a more comfortable way than we will with the train operating companies that are governed by the DfT.
But you're on strike.
We've had 1 day of strike. We've had 8 days of strikes on the English-based ones.
Well, you might think you've only just started unless you're actually giving the Scottish government the whip hand that you're willing to cave in.
Well, we don't have a tradition of caving in, so I don't think that's going to develop now.
I suppose that's my ultimate point and challenge to you, which is that you talk a lot about not liking the private model. We accept that. But whether it's private or nationalised, you take industrial action. So at what point, and with particular reference to the fact that does it actually make any difference anymore, is the reason these strikes continue to roll on is because what you've demonstrated is that people can carry on working from home, whereas time's gone by, I would have expected this to have been settled by now.
To make one point, Chair.
Can I just ask Mr Lynch to answer that?
Yeah, I think the Conservative government at the minute, is making this dispute longer, the DFT one. Where the DFT are not involved and where Grant Shapps wasn't involved, we have settled all of the major disputes. So if you take driver-only operation with Transport for Wales, with Merseyrail and with others, we have settled those disputes and we haven't got pay disputes apart from this issue in ScotRail. So there is a theme that the DFT and the Treasury have provoked some of this stuff by cutting the funding. We will continue to talk to ScotRail and Transport Scotland, and we will get a solution eventually.
And who do you think should end up paying for these increases? Is it the passenger or is it the general taxpayer?
Well, the railways will have to pay for them, and we need a settlement for the railways, a funding settlement that's going to be adequate. But at the minute, it's all being paid for by our members, either in terms of their jobs, the pay freeze that we've had for 3 years now, or the conditions that are going to be ripped up. And you can compress that spring for so long and you'll get a reaction.
Working on the basis there will be a settlement. There tends to be a settlement. So who should foot the bill for that? Should it be the rail passenger or the general taxpayer?
The bill for the railways is footed by a combination of subsidy and fare payers. But what we're not getting is the train operators chipping in at the minute. They are not forgoing any of their profits. Nor did they during COVID, and nor did the Roscoes, who continue to post record profits when there were less than 5% of people travelling. And the system this government has brought in rewards the Roscoes, who have no risk either, and it rewards the TOCs, who have no risk at all, for doing nothing, and that includes settling this dispute.
Okay, and Gavin had one last question.
It was just to say the slight difference is the starting point of the offers from the government, so we're much closer to where the RMT want us to go. So it's 5 years, no compulsory redundancies, and there's a 5% pay offer and excess revenue share, which is what the train drivers accepted at the end of their dispute, although they are...
I recognise I'm not asking you the questions, but that would actually suggest that it's a pretty unreasonable strike if it's such a great offer. But
well, they're absolutely brilliant. Both clearly got under Hue Merriman's skin, didn't they? You can clearly tell the difference, can't you? When a problem rises north of the border, clearly the government say, right, what's the problem? What can we do about it? And let's get it sorted. While down here, south of the border, it's how dare these militant lefty unionists defy us and rise up against us and try and take down this government. Accept your gruel and be gone. Well, here's Annie. You've heard it all through for months, haven't you? Militant lefties, unionists and whatever. Nutcases. But anyway, right. This will be the last one. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Take care, and I shall bid you farewell.